All right, good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, April 28th, 2021, and we'll get started here with our pre-market analysis. As I was telling everyone in the room just before, we are in a very tight range here, very sideways market, very undecided as we push here inch by inch, higher and higher. And so we'll jump to our higher time frames here just to see if they're giving us any clues as to what could be happening in the market today. So we will once again jump because we made a new all-time high again. We'll jump to the highest time frame we look at, which is the quarterly, and nothing has changed there. So nothing to be said there. The monthly as well, nothing really to be said there. Now what I'm noticing on the weekly is that we're trying to push higher, and arguably every day we push another 2 or 3 points up. But you can see as far as the slope goes, we've got kind of this, the slope is starting to iron out and flatten out here, but RVI is still pushing. So it seems like there's a lot of strength, a lot of attempts to push higher, but the market is barely pushing. Now, we were talking about last week's candle and how bullish that wick was, having that wick at the bottom of that candle is. And so the potential here is for us to go sideways, kind of almost like we did back here at the beginning of January, and then break out. Same thing here at the beginning of March, maybe just a little bit of sideways action and then the breakout. So wouldn't be surprising here if we now stay sideways this week and then break out at the end of the week, or at the end of the week, or at the beginning of next week. But overall, all three super high time frames all look bullish. There really are no signs of exhaustion. And so let's go down to our daily. And remember, on the daily last few days ago, we started to see the potential for what could have been a pullback. And then what we got was maybe like a 20-point pullback, and then the market went up again and pushed to a new all-time high. And that was not really in yesterday's regular trading hour session, but in the overnight, we pushed up there to 92.50. And really, if you look at Monday's range and Tuesday's range and where we are now, we're kind of right in the middle of all this price action. So remember, last week we had almost a similar situation, only the ranges were much larger. So we had this kind of chopping around. We stayed inside the range, on pretty much inside Monday's range all week, and then finally broke up. And so this week we're back, inside the range of Monday for the most part. And so let's see here on the daily. At the moment, there's nothing really to be said. There's no clear signs of any major exhaustion going on. There's also no bullish signs. We have a very indecisive daily candle from yesterday, and now the candle that opened for today, again, we have all day for that to shake out. So we're not going to really look too much at what that has to say at the moment. Overall, our high time frames are all saying no signs of exhaustion. However, things are starting to kind of peter out here as we jump down to the short time frames. So on the 4-hour here, just kind of take a look at what kind of happened here. And I remember seeing this actually when I looked at the charts earlier this morning. We had this slight push higher on price, but then RVI came just a little bit lower on our 4-hour chart. And so when this candle closed here right around 82, it ended up pulling back just under 10 points here. Again, these ranges are really, really tight this week. Something we haven't seen in quite a while on the S&P. So is the market kind of coiling up for a big push either way? That's kind of what I'm thinking. So on the 60-minute here, again, what we're trying to do is get a nice confluence of multi-time frame signals so that we can get a picture of where the market's going to go. And so far, the only thing I have on that 4-hour is just maybe a little bit of bearishness, but we've already got a pullback. On the 60-minute, let's take a look here if we got something similar here. And you can see that from, let's see, in the overnight, we pushed to make a higher high here compared to, say, just before midnight Pacific, going into the 1 a.m. Pacific bar here. But the RVI actually did push down, and the unfortunate part about this right here is we don't really have a defined peak, which is something I like to see in my indicator. So I'd like to see this peak to this peak, and this doesn't happen to have any peak. So not very pretty, and it's also, again, very sideways. This is a very difficult market to be analyzing from the perspective that we look at, because it's so tight, and it's you're going to have some difficulty really eking out clear signals here. So this might be a really quick morning analysis, kind of concluding that we don't really have all that much to go on. So far, the higher time frames, the super high time frames, really don't have any signs of exhaustion. And our 60-minute wasn't really showing anything too clear. Now our 30-minute, the problem is here is the same thing. So off the high that we made just a little bit earlier, around 4:30 in the morning, we got a little bit of bearishness, and the market sold off, and we sold from 84 to 75, 76, and so not even 10 points. And then when we made that low and the market started to turn again, we then got a bullish indication. So it's very kind of choppy and messy, as I've been saying, and so we might have some kind of guidelines here, but we're going to have to see if any kind of trends are showing up here with the short time frames, and see if it agrees with anything we're seeing on the 30-minute. So this is probably going to be one of the messiest mornings that we've had in the trade room as far as signals go, just because of how tight the range has been and how choppy it's been. Now we look at the 10-minute, and it's telling us essentially the same thing off the low. So you can see that as we pushed lower here, from the previous swing low, you've got a pretty clear indication. And then the earlier swing low back here, where we saw the indication on the 30-minute, we also had that divergence there. And so overall, we got a nice bullish divergence, but now, off of this most recent high we just made right at 82, we now have the opposite signal. So as you can see, again, the reason we do this is for the stars to align and to give us a clear picture for a move, and that's why we do this whole pre-market analysis. Unfortunately, in this kind of market, we are not getting anything too clear, and so it's going to be difficult to really get a direction, because nothing is really lining up like it has in the past. So let's jump to our 3-minute here and just take a look at the most recent area. And so what we're going to have to do today, because it's so difficult to get a very clear direction, we're just going to have to take it level by level and signal by signal here. So on the 3-minute, I'm just looking off the low there, not necessarily any clear divergence off the lows. You can see where we sold off and we had that 30-minute indication up top. We did also get it on the 3, but really not very important information there. On a 3-minute and down, we're looking at very short-term moves and scalps. And so this chart at the moment is not really helping us out with our overall bias. And I think what we're going to have to do this morning, because nothing's really lining up, is kind of step back and look at some of the important levels above us and below us, so that we can start to look for areas to take trades. So I'll pull up my 10-minute here. And we do have some decent levels below us. And then above us, it's all open sky. And so remember, I'll just kind of cover that really quickly here. Remember that 4180 was our first area of interest on the upside, which we ended up achieving right around 83 and pulling back. And then we came up just a little bit past it and pulled back again. and then we made that 92 high yesterday. The next level that we were interested in was 4,200, which happens to be right here near the 2 KPs. And then the next level after that was really right up around 4,250. So if we do end up breaking up above 9,250, we've got the 4,200 area, which coincides with our KPs. And then we have the CP and the KP up here right in front of that level that at least I was interested in and have been interested in ever since we were pushing up to this high around 4180. So we've got that 4250 with the 2 prediction points in the way, and then the 4200 area where we have the 2 prediction points. So if we do end up breaking above 4192, we have some areas to look at where we could expect some resistance in the market, and it won't necessarily mean that we're selling it, but we're looking for areas where we could have some interaction in the market. So on the way down, this will be interesting here. So we can look at our previous daily high, low, and 50%. And you can see right now, we're right at the 50% level. And like I told some of you earlier, 4181 happens to be what's known as the point of control, at least for the entire week now. So ever since we got out of this larger range from last week and we pushed up here, we're now in this tighter range, and 4181 happens to be the point of control, pretty much where the market has spent the most amount of time over the last 3 days here. So 4179.50 is close enough. That's pretty much 50% of all of this price range here. And so if bulls are going to be strong this morning, they're going to hold this area and maybe hold where we got that bullish divergence around 75.50, and they're going to push to test the all-time high. If the bulls don't have strength, we could end up seeing a pullback here to break the previous daily low around 66.75, and then we have some deeper levels to look at. So these deeper levels really have not changed because all of the levels we had from the week before in this chop range are still pretty relevant. And so if we break down from that 66 area and we break 64 here, you can see that 53.50 is a pretty relevant level. And then this 45.50 might be less interesting only because there's not as much lining up here in as far as price action goes. We had some resistance all the way back on the 15th here and then eventually broke through. We did find some support on the 19th here. And then ever since then, well, it looks like we did have a little bit of interaction here on the 23rd before we broke through 45.50. We pulled back almost to the tick to it and then bounced. And so that's still a relevant level. But what looks more interesting to me is the KP down around 41.40. So if we start breaking down, we've got, the prediction point there at 60. We've got 53.50, 45.50, and then that KP. And then if we start breaking beyond that, we can start looking at some of the deeper levels. But for the immediate, for the open, we just want to be aware of some of these levels below us. And then the levels above us are going to include the all-time high, the 2 KPs right around 4,200, and then the 2 prediction points right in front of 42.50. And that's really all we have this morning. I wish we had a really clear case, especially for some of the new people in here. I believe Gallo is new to the chat, and so welcome, El Gallo. Thanks for joining us. Fortunately, you got us right here in the middle of a very tight range, and so we don't have a clear bias this morning.